from Sports Illustrated joining us. Emma, great to have you on. How you doing? And I don't know how much you caught of this, but to get your thoughts on the contract for Ohtani and your overall reaction to what's gone down the last few days for him and the Dodgers.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought was kind of like everyone else's, like, just, oh my God, how is this possible? Which is, it's kind of funny because if you think about it, like Eric was just saying, the actual real value of this contract is going to be closer to like $460 million, which is like in the ballpark of what people had originally projected. They were talking about maybe 500 million, and this is that when you account for how this money is going to depreciate over time, which obviously we don't know for sure, but we can estimate. But because everyone was expecting that $700 million number, and we've been talking about that for 2 days, it just seemed like this huge crazy bombshell yesterday to hear about how this was structured. And I agree, it's really interesting. I don't know how much of a precedent it's going to set, because he really is such a one of a kind player who, has all of these off the field endorsements that really aren't mimicked by other players. They just don't have the same market because he's a unicorn. And the Dodgers are obviously in a pretty special situation in terms of their ownership group. They have the biggest television contract in the sport. They're just a lot more stable and have a lot more resources than a bunch of other teams that you'd be talking about. But yeah, it's fascinating. I wasn't expecting it at all. I thought we'd get some big deferrals here. I didn't think it would be 97% of the contract. And yeah, just crazy stuff.
Here's my question. Could everybody do this, though? I'm saying obviously not everybody, but could a handful of teams pull this deal off? If its present day's value is 468 million, which I think everybody projected 500 to 600 million, could the handful of teams that he met with, who knows, have done this?
I think there are certainly more teams that could have. I don't think the Dodgers are like one of one here. I do think you have to have a pretty stable ownership group. Like if you were looking to sell in the next 10 to 15 years, that's a lot harder if you have $680 million waiting in the wings to be paid out. I also think the television contract is such a big one that we're in such a weird place with that right now, where that market is shifting really quickly. We've seen bankruptcies, like, the Padres thought they were in okay spot with their deal, and then all of a sudden that's gone. Same with the Diamondbacks, with, the bankruptcies of those RSNs. The Dodgers are currently not in that situation, and that helps a lot. But they're not the only team that has a lot of money to spend. It has a stable ownership group. Like, there are other teams that could have done this, but I don't think it's going to start like a wave of copycats with talking about this much money deferred for this long.
All right, let's talk about Robert's clandestine flight from, I guess, technically from Australia to California, California to Toronto. What was I read your article about, the interviewing him and like what was it? Was he overwhelmed by like the calls that he was getting? It was unexpected. What was his reaction to the whole thing outside of what was written in the article, what you wrote his responses were?
Yeah, I was really interested in his take, which was, as soon as everyone was tracking that flight and we had an idea it actually probably wasn't Ohtani, the first thing I thought was, I want to hear from who is on that flight and what that's like. And yeah, it sounds like it was just kind of total chaos for him, because he made sure to emphasize his private jet does have really good Wi-Fi and good connectivity, so must be nice. So he normally is very online when he's in his plane. But he was with his kids. He has 5.5-year-old twins. And so he was taking care of them and doing everything he could to entertain them. So he wasn't looking at his phone at all. He didn't see any of this. And then the flight lands and you have customs officials coming on board asking, where's Ohtani? He has no idea what's going on. Gets off the flight, sees that his phone is just full of messages from both friends who think he has Ohtani on his plane, friends who think he's trying to buy the Blue Jays, friends who think he's coming in to close the deal. There's helicopters, there's press, just this whole crazy thing. And he had no idea until, he landed and saw what was going on. And at that point, it was already a story of its own.
Have you ever seen anything like this? Have you ever seen anything like mistaken anything? Like, because baseball reporters that were, well-respected people were like putting their reputation out there, like Ohtani's going to the Blue Jays and he's on this private plane. I mean, without, I guess, checking anything info about this plane. Have you ever seen anything surely not in baseball. This has never happened.
Right. Like, with college football coaching searches, I feel like you see a lot of private jet tracking, but that's because how many private jets fly into like Norman, Oklahoma? Obviously, Toronto and LA are kind of different there. And yeah, I mean, I certainly don't think it was a great day for baseball media on Friday. I think we had, people really getting out over their skis, reporting things without ironclad confirmation and not caveating it appropriately. I don't think that was great. I do think it was a lot of fun in some ways, just because, I mean, we were talking about sushi reservations and all tracking this flight. Like, it was crazy, but it was kind of fun. And I think, certainly sad for Blue Jays fans, sad for, the upstandingness of the media in a lot of ways, but just crazy experience that I don't think we're going to see again.
Was it crazy though because of we had no information? Like if there was no leakage of information, that's what made it more crazy, right? Because nobody was like, oh, even when Shohei went to Dunedin, it was like, oh, it was secret. And then Dave Roberts dropped a bombshell by saying, oh, the Dodgers talked to him. So because of the secretive nature of all these meetings and whatever negotiations, it made every little breadcrumb that much more. So I think that kind of probably led to the craziness.
Yeah, I totally think that fed it, which, totally Otani's prerogative. If he wanted this to be private, he can have this private. Like, he's such a singular player. He got to set the terms for his own free agency. But that is really unusual. I think we're really used to seeing these things play out in the media, whether you have, agents, players leaking little bits of info to kind of grease the wheels on things, to try to sometimes play teams off of each other. Like, it's, pretty customary to have much more of that information coming out in drips and drabs through the press. And obviously we didn't have that here. And I do think it kind of just drove people a little bit crazy, to the point where we ended up where we were on Friday, just chasing all these rumors and grabbing reports that weren't, totally ironclad, and running with them in a way that was pretty unusual.
Now that's my question. Is like, is that annoying? As you know, it's like, look at the biggest free agency. The whole winter meetings was surrounded like, what's Ohtani doing? We all like Ohtani, okay, Yamamoto, Snell, but it's Ohtani. Soto deal, okay, but it's Ohtani. Isn't that annoying? That's like, look at, let's just, if you want to be the face, like me and AJ were talking about it. If he wants to be the face, and I think he wants to be the face, you have to be a face. It's kind of like he's a silhouette in most instances. And is it annoying covering this kind of, I guess, inconsistent coverage
I
or
think it
information?
presents, challenges. Certainly, it's very different. And I do think, being on a marquee franchise like the Dodgers now, I think there will be, added pressure to be a little more public. Who knows if he's going to want to do that or not? But I think it's challenging, but it's not like, if this is how he wants to run things, this is how he wants to run things. And like, there are ways to find other interesting stories here that aren't just like chasing the flow of information, right? So like, even like talking to Robert Herjavec about his flight, like, that wasn't a story I expected to be doing this off season, but it was something fun and interesting. And like, if those are the stories we're getting, I think, if reporters are driven by the interest in finding a good story, like, there are still good stories here that are interesting things. They just are going to look different. I think if he wants to be private about this stuff, and especially like something like this, where you're talking about a contract that's going to define the rest of your life and figuring out where you're going to live for the next 10 years and like define your career, like, if he wants privacy around that, he can have that privacy, I think.
Did he make the decision that will make the most impact? All the caveats of this. Baseball, is this going to be where he wins the most World Series? Not to say that that's more important than he's going to have an entire impact on a country had he signed with the Blue Jays. Not to make, light of the fact that in LA, he's closer to Japan. He's closer to going home to Japan. Although when I flew to Japan, I flew from Detroit to Japan, and it took 2 minutes less than flying from LA to Japan the other time I went to Japan. So, like, is signing with LA the place where it's the biggest, that Shohei has made the biggest impact? Not saying that that's what his goal is, to make the greatest impact, but is that where the largest impact that he could possibly have is?
I think you can make an argument that it really is. And like you were saying, there's different types of impact. Like, I agree, if he'd chosen the Blue Jays, that's impacting a whole country in a different way that you just can't have by choosing any of the other 29 teams. But I think an impact in terms of the likelihood of winning, obviously, as we've seen with the Dodgers in the past, having a stacked roster and a high payroll isn't a guarantee that you're going to win the World Series, but giving himself the best chance to be in position to win not just one championship, but potentially multiple, I think he has the best chance to make that impact there. I think in terms of, the endorsements, off the field activities, tapping into both American and Japanese, commercial opportunities. LA is incredible for that. I think he really, obviously he was already in that general Southern California market with the Angels, but in terms of like being with the historic marquee franchise that already has really great brand recognition in Japan. I mean, you can look back to Hideo Nomo and the kind of explosion of Japanese commercial opportunities they had there back in the 90s. Like that's well established and there's a lot to draw from there. I think in terms of impact of potentially winning the most and also just off the field branding and endorsement opportunities, he was going to have some of those anywhere, but this is by far, I think, the biggest chance to do that.
So, Emma, he's got a press conference coming up, and I'm sure it will be busy. And we reminded Max Muncy yesterday that his life is about to change. I'm talking about Max's because it's not just the Japanese media coming over. It's just global media that's going to be covering him to the highest degree here based on who he is. So let's say you're at that presser. You get one question. What are you asking him?
I think I honestly have to go with what is the name of your dog? It has been driving me crazy. I really want to know, why was he so secretive about it? I'm sure other people will ask all the hard-hitting ones of how he made this choice and what he wants, but we know he wants to win. He was always linked to LA. I really want to know, what is the dog's name?
So, Emma, before you came on, Adam and I were talking about this, and Adam said he wants to be the face of baseball. And I said, well, does he want to be the face of baseball? Because he doesn't answer questions. So the over-under on how many questions he actually answers tomorrow. And why couldn't he do the press conference and give the name of his dog when he won the MVP? Oh, that's right, because they had technical difficulties, so he couldn't answer it. It's amazing. I've never seen a Zoom have technical difficulties, but, whatever. So what do you think the over-under is on how many questions he answers?
I think we're actually going to see him open up a little more here just because he's been able to prepare for this press conference. I agree he could have prepared for the MVP one. Wasn't exactly a surprise that he won there. It was, I think, really strange that didn't happen. But for this one, he's known for months, if not years, that he was going to eventually have a big press conference upon signing with a new team. This is going to be kind of just like a singular opportunity for him. I think he's probably spent time prepping for all of the likely questions he's going to get. It really is, the really unusual setting for him to have to be at. And I think if he's going in there committed to it, he's already mentioned it himself a couple times on social media, which is really rare for him. I think we're going to see a fair amount of questions. I wouldn't be surprised if we see this go for, 30 minutes plus.
Now, me and AJ was, like I said, we were talking, and I said that he was able to hide a little bit behind the Angels media. LA, they're going to ask the tough questions. You can't slide out the back door. You can't go out the back room just to get to your car. Do you think that the LA media and LA markets will open him up a little bit more, though? Like I said, because my example was Mookie Betts. Boston, we knew Mookie was great. We knew he was a personality, charismatic. But you get him to LA, it's like, this guy's like one of the coolest guys in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely going to be more pressure to open up. And also, who knows, because no one has talked to him, but maybe now that he has kind of that pressure off his back of knowing, I'm going to have free agency soon, I'm probably going to be signing a record signing contract. I have all of this weighing on me in terms of how I'm going to navigate that and how I'm going to navigate questions around that. Now that he's done that and is able to move forward with that, and also, chances are is not going to be in a situation where he's doing incredible things on the field that we've never seen before, and he's also losing every night. Now that that's all, done and finished with, I think there is a good chance we see him hopefully open up a little bit more. Who knows? It's up to him. But I think you're totally right. There is going to be more pressure. There's going to be a bigger spotlight. There is going to be just a bigger media contingent. And and hopefully now that he is, out of all of the dysfunctional features of the Angels and has gone through free agency and has that out of the way, hopefully we see him start to kind of open up and share a little bit more of himself because, by all accounts, he's like a really fun guy and great teammate. There are some little anecdotes that have come out that really seem like he has a cool personality. So it would be nice to get to see a lot more of that in the coming years.
Is there going to be a more pressure-packed, panicked moment than when the Dodgers play their first playoff game? Because they're going to win 100-plus games. People are like, oh, now their lineup, they're going to win this. They don't have any pitching. So people are like, oh, they're going to win 82 games. They're going to win 100 games. The Dodgers just win 100 games. Game 1 of the NLDS, is there going to be more pressure on any top 3 of a lineup than those 3 guys?
I don't think there possibly could be. I mean, it's weird because normally at this time of year, you'd be talking about the team that's defending the title of like, can the Rangers repeat, whatever. But in this case, you're right. It's totally the Dodgers. I think there's just no way to top that amount of pressure that, obviously 6 years in Anaheim, Ohtani didn't see a playoff game, that he's now ideally going to have a chance to do that in what could be one of the best lineups ever. That's just like an unmatched amount of pressure, I think. And I really hope we get to see it because it should be a lot of fun.
I think at his press conference, he should go, not 1, not 2, not
that
3.
Didn't go well.
You remember that? Hey, they did win, just not. What number did they get up to? Do you remember that during the Miami press conference? Did you say 3, 4?
6 or 6?
Six?
6 or 7. Yeah, they got 2.
It gives me chills. Like I'm like, it was embarrassing when he started to get not 5, not 6, and then you can see people in the background like, LeBron, no, your hair, you're balding. We need to get that hair back. Let's win 1, just 1.
It's like Pinocchio. Stop. Emma, we appreciate the time. Thanks for everything you're doing in terms of putting out the really interesting and unique articles. You can follow her at Emma, Baccelliere on Twitter, and all of her articles as well on SI. Appreciate you. Have a good one, Emma.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys.
Great to talk to you. All right. So, by the way, before we move